March 22nd. I'm Rem.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, Cthulhu Mythos.
Let's do this. All right, so last Friday, we had a little problem. We were out of bread, and we didn't have any... We was running out of juice. We didn't have much to eat for dinner.
Well, other than the infinite litany of frozen meat and frozen vegetables and bits of food that last forever that we'd bought a long time ago, and the apocalypse never came, the zombie apocalypse, so we never used it.
Yeah, well, what happened was there was a huge snow fuck, and we didn't want to go anywhere, and the grocery store here sucks anyway, so we didn't mind not going to it. And as a result, we haven't been to the grocery store in a longer time than usual. And we've had to eat the stuff that we had around the house all week instead of going to get more stuff to eat as we usually do.
I found frozen meats, and I wasn't sure what they were, but when I thawed them, they were tasty.
I bought a loaf of bread on the way home from the city and then French toasted it to eat.
God, we ate a lot of French toast that night.
We did, because the thing with French toast is you make the little egg stuff, and you put the bread in it, and then you put the bread in a pan until it's edible.
Now, when I make French toast, the next step, there's no pan. I usually just eat the French toast immediately as I make it until I'm full. And then I continue making French toast until I'm out of egg.
Yeah, well, I just kept making French toast, and I couldn't stop, because once you get going, you can just keep French toasting until as long as you have bread and egg, you can just keep going forever. So I made way too much for two people. I think I ate like 5 slices. It was out of control.
Yep. I guess we got too used to having Emily around and making a bunch of food, or having Alex over and making a bunch of food.
Yep, and today I ate one of the last 2 frozen pizzas.
I ate like a pound of rice. That was my dinner. I just filled the rice cooker up, and then I ate all the rice in it.
That's a pretty bad dinner.
It was a pretty good dinner. It was jasmine rice with some sesame oil.
What do you say tomorrow we go out to eat somewhere for awesome?
Wow, that'll hold it off even one more day.
I know, right?
We might have to go tomorrow anyway. We got people coming over for D&D of all things.
Oh, great.
Yeah, which means now that our house is clean, every bit of the house is clean, everything's nice and tidy, and all the fridge is empty relatively, and all the snacks are cleaned up.
The freezer's more empty than it's been since we moved in.
Then the Visigoths are going to come. They're going to eat all the food that's left, like rats. Then they're going to dirty up every single dish in the house. I don't know how they manage it.
Well, that's all well and good. But Saturday at 10 a.m., I'm finally going to get rid of those goddamn GamePro magazines.
Oh, the ones you wanted to sell on eBay, but were too lazy, so you tried to give them away for free?
Well, the only reason I didn't sell them on eBay is because, think about it, I've got basically almost every GamePro magazine. I think there's a couple missing. Who knows what happened to them? Who cares? From 1995 through 2005. That's like 10 years of magazines. 120 magazines, some thick, some thin. But the pages are very thin paper. And they weigh a lot. One magazine doesn't weigh much.
I remember when you had them stacked up, and the ones on the bottom had kind of compressed into thinner entities that were barely magazines.
They're very, very heavy when combined. So even if I sold them on eBay, the shipping cost would be like hundreds of dollars, more than the magazines are worth. Oh, I don't imagine that anyone would want to pay that. And it would be also very difficult for me to calculate it. And a miscalculation could result in actually losing money instead of gaining money.
Well, in that case, you just back out of the eBay deal and take your negative feedback and not care.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about selling things that aren't 100 pounds on eBay, though, so it's not the greatest idea. Or maybe I'll sell them on some other auction
Then you
sites.
just make another account.
Yeah, it's tied to your credit card, they know.
Whatever, I have multiple credit cards.
Whatever. Anyway, the point is that I decided I'll just give them away to someone who lives around here on Craigslist. And a lot of people said they wanted them, but no one had the balls to actually come and get them. So I finally found a guy, and he's going to meet me at the post office.
You're behind the post office.
Where the parking lot is.
Yeah. I just have this vision at like 2 a.m. Scott's going to meet this shady dude.
I'm going to meet him at 10 a.m.
behind the post office.
Where
He's going to get sodomized.
I had to go to the post office anyway.
By an Adebisi-like figure.
I had to
who really wants some GamePro.
Give this guy these GamePros.
He's smart, because he saw that Scott's giving away GamePro. So he's obviously some sort of nerd or geek. So he won't be able to fight back from the vicious sodomy that awaits.
So we know what rim psychology is. But yeah, this guy, I think he's an art teacher nearby, so he will probably give these to kids, which will be awesome.
This is actually kind of cool. Now, you want to hear my crazy scheme? Get him Just make up a receipt. Don't know any numbers on it. Just have it basically say the number of magazines and what they are.
Uh-huh.
And get him to sign it, especially if he's an educator who's going to use it in the school. Doesn't hurt him to sign it. Now, you can, through various means, assay the value of said Game Pros, and it is now a charitable deduction.
Here's the problem. I just did my taxes. I'm gonna get.
This is for next year, Scott.
I know. I'm not talking. I'm not done yet.
All right.
I just did my taxes just now, right? And I'm gonna get a nice return because I gave the government too much goddamn money, which I'm not gonna make that mistake again.
I still haven't done my taxes yet.
I
so
refilled
we'll
my W-2 when I got the new job, so there's no way I'm giving the government too much money this year. Regardless, I tried to, actually itemize all my deductions and everything, and it never adds up to more than the default deduction.
You do realize that charitable things can be put in separately depending on how you fill it out.
Well, I filled it out. I just went along and I filled everything out, and I included my $20 for Child's Play, and it didn't do anything for me.
Now, you realize that all charity does is for every dollar you give to charity, it removes that dollar that you gave to charity from your tax burden.
Yep, I know that. It didn't help, though.
Well, because you only donated $20.
Well, duh, because I never donate enough for it to do anything.
All right, so how many Game Pros do you think are in that pile of Game Pros?
Over 100, easily.
All right, over 100. Now, what is the retail value if you had bought them new? Per Game Pro, on average.
I had a subscription, which is
But what would they cost if it wasn't a subscription, if you were buying them in the store?
Well, I don't have the whole parts of the magazines. Like, I tore a lot of shit off of them. And,
What? Why?
Well, they used to have, ads attached to them, and some of them had CDs in them that are gone, and a lot of them had, those...
All right. So anyway, you take the value, and then maybe make deductions for wear and tear, but then increases for value over time, and all that.
There's no value over time.
There might be.
It's a shitty-ass Even you can buy Game Pro number 1 on eBay for, $10.
All right. So then take all those adjusted values.
So they're worth the paper they're printed on, but less because they're already printed on.
And what you do is you deduct it. You could probably get $500 or $600 all told if you played it right and you documented it properly.
How about no? Because that's BS.
I'm the one who gets the gigantic tax return every year. Though actually,
that's bad. You don't want a tax return. That means you gave the government too much.
No, I get the gigantic tax return because I pay the right amount, but then I do something weird with my taxes.
Well, I'm gonna laugh one day when the IRS comes looking for you.
Well, the thing is, they were all legitimate. The problem is, this year is the first year I don't have anything. I donated $50 to the RIAA Anime Club, and I donated some money, but not much money, to the local Let Poor People Have Electricity fund. And that's it. I don't have any moving expenses. I don't have any special tuition stuff to deduct. Because remember, I paid tuition last year.
I can always deduct my awesome student loan interest payments.
Oh, I can deduct that, but it's nothing.
That's my biggest deduction is the student loan interest.
Really?
Yeah, I paid thousands of dollars in student loan interest this year.
What? I paid $300 total, and that included that crazy 12% loan that I got rid of.
I paid a lot of student loan interest according to the piece of paper I got.
Wow, I didn't realize you had that much student debt.
I don't know. That's just what the numbers said.
Nah.
Huh?
Well, I take care of mine manually, so I pay up ahead and all that.
I let it all go automatic. It'll be paid off eventually. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Plus, what really helped me last year was, remember when we moved? Way back when we moved here the first time?
And you counted everything as moving expenses?
Well, a lot of it was moving expenses, like the $1,000-some we spent on that stupid truck.
Yeah, that was a moving expense.
Yeah, especially all the diesel.
Yeah. I remember when you had to fill that thing up and take a taxi back and you...
That was horrible. I deducted the taxi, though. That was a moving expense.
Good job.
Actually, it was. I followed all the rules. I didn't have to do anything shady, and I still have the receipts.
Okay. Good for you.
I got that file cabinet there. I keep track of all that stuff. That's why I keep paperwork around.
I keep paperwork around, but only the every piece of paper I say, will I ever look at this piece of paper again? If the answer is yes, I keep it. Otherwise,
well, you realize
I throw it out.
that you have to keep X years of all your tax documents.
I keep all tax documents for sure.
Yeah, well, those are tax documents. They're the receipts that back up the deductions I made. That's the only reason I keep them.
I don't keep...
I'm going to throw them away in 2 more years.
Yeah, taking standard deduction, I don't really have to keep so many receipts around.
God, I file a manual 1040A every year.
I use TurboTax. It's easy.
Actually, one year I had to file a 1040 because the A wouldn't cut it.
Actually, though, this was the first year where I made so much money that I couldn't do it for free. I had to actually give TurboTax money instead of not giving them any money and just using their website for free.
Yeah, I think you're also above the line where you can't use the easy form anymore.
Nope, no easy form, just a normal whatever.
I never actually got to use the easy form.
I've used the easy form almost every year. I don't think I used it last year, but I definitely.
I never could. When I was in college, I spent a bunch of bonds to pay for stuff, and the bonds had weird business, so I had to use a 1040A. Then the next year, I had a bunch of other weird business. Then the next year, I made too much money. And then from that point on, I made too much. I never got to use one.
They're awesome. It takes like 5 minutes.
Nah.
You just say, how much money did you make? Are you allowed to use the easy form? If the answer is yes, do this math. Here's
Wait a
how
minute,
much
Scott.
money we owe
Wait
you.
a minute, but I thought, according to the internets, that you don't have to pay the income tax because technically Ohio wasn't a state when they voted for the Federal Reserve and the IRS and all that business.
All right, you try that.
Yeah.
See what happens.
I just remember my dad knew a guy who tried that all the time, and he always said, yeah, you don't have to pay taxes, you don't have to pay taxes. Dude went to jail one day, and that was the end of him.
That's what they do.
Anyway, in the news, the American Postal Service has decided
I mean
that...
the United States Postal Service.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna be all ethnocentric and say American here.
Oh, not good.
Yeah. We don't have so many listeners in South America compared to the rest of...
Except for the listeners in South America who are going, rabble.
Yeah, you know what? If you're in South America, let us know. That'd be cool.
There was a guy. He does let us know constantly.
I know. Are there any more? I'm curious.
Probably. I've
Well,
seen
speak
some
up.
on some frappers.
Anyway, the United States Postal Service, the USPTO, has decided to raise the price of stamps. See, in America, every few years, for generally semi-random reasons, they decide to raise the price of stamps, and they'll raise it
USPTO is the Patent and Trademark
Yeah,
Office.
it is. Anyway.
It's the USPS.
Yes. They raise the price of stamps like 3 cents, and then they sell 3-cent stamps, so you don't have to waste all your old stamps.
Yep.
Even though I'd be fine if they just raised it to 50 cents 10 years ago and just left it there so it was easier. I don't send that much mail.
Yeah, not only do I not send that much mail, but think about it. Even if stamps were 50 cents, 75 cents, even if they were $1, right? What can I get for $1? I can get a bagel. I can get...
Not a bagel with cream cheese, just a bagel.
I can get a bagel with butter for $1.
Yeah, but not cream cheese.
I can get a couple packs of gum.
Yeah, crappy gum.
Good gum. You can get some double mint for $1.
Not so much double mint. You can get a lot of fruit by the foot for $1.
The plenty packs are like a little over $1. So
get a lot of bubble tape for $1.
You can get a plenty pack with a few sticks missing. Now think about this. The Postal Service, for one first-class stamp, will take a piece of paper and perhaps some other things and transport them to anywhere else in the United States very quickly. You don't even have to bring it to them. They'll take it out of your house and then bring it to someone else's house right to the door. That's worth $1. And they're only charging, 30-something cents now? And they're going to charge 40-something cents?
Yeah.
It still is steal. What the hell are you complaining about? The only people who lose from this are people who send lots of mail. And the only people who send lots of mail are junk mailers.
Yep. Now, the best part is they've added this thing called the Forever Stamp, which you can buy for, I believe, the 41 cents. Yep, 41 cents. But unlike normal stamps, they don't have an amount on them. They are worth one first-class postage no matter what forever.
Oh, that's a good idea. We could buy a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, they don't sell them on sheets because they don't want people who send a lot of junk mail out but don't send enough junk mail to use the junk mail rate to use them. They're just going to sell them in small quantities to normal people.
Yeah, I'll go buy it. Can you get them like in a roll?
Yeah, you just can't get them in the crazy gigantic sheets.
Yeah, I'd go and get a roll of them, and then I'd never need freaking stamps again. Because that's something I always tend to buy stamps like as I need them. Like if I have to mail a bunch of stuff.
I just bought stamps for the first time in like 6 months.
Like when I need to mail one letter, I buy one stamp. And when I need to mail like a few letters, I buy one book of stamps. And I always don't have stamps the next time I need them.
Let's see.
So this time, I'm going to go to the post office. I'm going to buy a bunch of them.
I send about 7 letters a year.
I don't send too many. I send the rent.
Oh, yeah, the rent. So I send like 12.
And I send...
electric bill, I do.
Yep. Not much. I pay most of every bill online. So, yeah.
So I don't have much more to say about that. I just thought I'd bring it up. I thought it was interesting. The internet lost its shit over this as they lose their shit over everything. But people are going to forget, and then the rate change will happen. And people will grumble, and then they'll forget, and then it won't matter.
Yep. Anyway, there's been a lot of RIAA newses lately, so it's time to talk about those assholes again. Now, there's quite a few newses. There's newses about them suing people. There's news is about them interfering with schools some more. Like they tried to sue a bunch more college students.
There's a bunch of schools who are fighting back and saying, we can't map IPs to people, so quit your yapping.
That was like, I think that was Wisconsin, was like, our IPs keep changing all the time. This is BS. Leave us alone. You're wasting our time.
More power to them.
There was a story about a guy who, the school has like a DMCA guy, and he went to this guy, and the guy was an asshole. And apparently everyone goes to the guy and then caves in. And since he didn't cave in, the guy was super asshole-ish. And it's a pretty good read. Anyway, the story I want to talk about is CD music sales down in Q1 2007. Guess how much they're down?
20%?
20%.
Huh. Fancy me knowing what Scott was going to talk about ahead of time. It's almost like we planned this.
Almost. I mean, CD sales have been going down quite a bit over the past few years.
Yeah,
but
now
this is a huge drop.
Isn't it interesting that, don't the numbers show that online music sales are going up?
Yeah, but online music sales, compared to the times in, say, the 90s where CD stuff sales were crazy, even if you add the online sales and the real sales together, it's not even close to what the sales used to be.
Now, people might say, yeah, piracy is the reason CD sales are down, like they always say, but I point out that way, way back in the day, when, there was no Napster, there weren't even MP3s, you couldn't easily pirate music at all. Even then, I thought that $15 for a CD was a total ripoff, and I bought maybe 4 CDs over the course of, 7 years.
Yeah, I think the real reason that CD sales are going down is, way back when recorded music started selling a whole lot, you had people like Elvis. It was just so big. Few artists that were just so incredibly huge. You had the Beatles. They were just so huge. The Rolling Stones were so huge. And then in the 90s, you had a lot of, pop stars that were so huge. Now there aren't really huge pop stars, music stars so much anymore. If you look at like the Grammys, they tend to be people who were famous a long time ago. Where are the new famous musicians that are super popular everywhere?
Maybe it's more of a balkanization where people in local areas like local bands, or people all over the world like one little band, and then another set of people all over the world like one other little band.
Or because people finally have access to lots of different genres of music instead of just pop and rock. They can find the genre that they like that was never in the store on the internet, and they don't need the record companies that sell vanilla music anymore.
Also, the fact that there is a lot of actually free, not illegal music all over the internet, and a lot of it's really good.
Yeah, if anything hurt record sales more, it wasn't Napster, it was ocremix.org. But yeah, they're down 20%. Now, let me give you an idea of how big a hit this is, right? There was a CD recently. It was a movie soundtrack to some movie I've never heard of called Dreamgirls, right? It hit #1. It was the #1 CD. It sold 60,000 CDs in a week. In 2005, it wouldn't have been in the top 30. But in 2007, it's #1.
I wonder if this sudden drop has a lot to do with the industry and what music is available, or if maybe all this time us geeks have been bitching about the RIAA has started to leak into the masses now that the RIAA is being, well, probably the biggest set of jackasses in the world at this point, outside of actual jackasses like North Korea and Iran, but I digress.
Yeah, well, there's an anecdotal evidence I recently read. Some guy who is a super music CD collecting guy. He's the kind of guy who bought everything. He had a zillion vinyls, and then he bought a zillion CDs, and he goes to all sorts of record shops everywhere and loves buying CDs, has tons of them. He recently started buying some iTunes, and of course, the DRM got in his way. Big time got in his way. Basically, he paid for music, and then he couldn't play it. So he wrote this big rant about how he's super pissed, and now he doesn't buy music so much anymore.
Way to kill probably one of the biggest sources of your income. People like that.
Yep.
I mean, DVDs, I get the impression that the primary buyers of DVDs in America are hoarders and collectors and people who have this whatever need. They feel like, yeah, I gotta own all these DVDs, and they want to have this giant rack of DVDs next to their hi-fi system.
I see a lot of people, I've been to their houses, and they've got like all their favorite movies on DVD, like just crap tons of them in big racks.
I have all my favorite movies at my disposal anytime I want through Netflix.
Yep, or BitTorrents.
Yes.
Hey, I buy DVDs, but not many.
They have to be either really cheap or they have to be something that I plan on watching a lot or showing to other people or lending to other people.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it's got to be.
I mean, when I bought Firefly, it's not like I needed to buy it. I knew like 10 people I could have borrowed it from, and I'd seen most of it already. I bought Firefly mostly to lend to yet more people.
Yeah, I mean, and think about this, though. If you buy a CD, what are you going to do with it? You rip the MP3s and throw the CD away, and then if you don't lend it to people, you give it to people. Here's the MP3s. Go, have fun.
Yeah.
So what's the point of paying for the CD? I mean, it's kind of silly. Not like buying a DVD where there's actually sort of a point to buying it.
Now, there's still, I guess the fun thing is that I don't even pirate any RIAA music anymore at all.
Me either.
Well, part of that's that I've already got all the old good music I like.
Yeah, all the music from like the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s that was actually good that I like, or, you know, the 60s and the 50s also. I've got it all already. I got it a long time ago. And I sort of rightfully own it because some of it I bought on CD for real.
Oh, I don't rightfully own any of it.
Some of it I rightfully own, but not much. You know, but it there you go. What else? Yeah. There's no new music I want from them.
Well, all the new music I like is either indie stuff or already free stuff or foreign stuff where, while it may technically be illegal to pirate Japanese CDs, I'm not going to pay $30 for a CD.
No, I'm not going to pay $30 or $40 for a CD, especially when they make it incredibly difficult for me to buy it.
Of course, well, it's not that. You're in New York City. It's pretty easy to buy it, actually.
But I got to go find it. I don't know, how to look for it in a Japanese store.
You go in and you ask and they point at it.
Yeah, it's no good.
My issue is more with the fact that, well, maybe not my issue, but there is an interesting argument that it may not technically be illegal to pirate foreign media simply in certain circumstances.
Well, it's whether it is or whether it isn't, I don't think it should be. If something is not available in the place where you live, but you
Except it is. You can order it on the internet for a lot of money.
But it's not available. Like if there's a movie and it's only available on Region 3 DVD and you live in Region 1, I see no reason that you shouldn't just be allowed to just take it. If they don't want to sell it to you, and you can take it without harming anyone.
But CDs aren't regioned and they are available. You can buy any Japanese CD online.
Yeah.
It just costs a lot of money.
From a company in Japan that's far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just rationalizing. At least I come out with it.
Nah. It's not licensed for distribution in your country.
So
it's legally not available in your country. Even though someone over there will sell it to you and send it to you by,
I like my rationalization a lot more.
Whatever. It's cool. So the RIAA is sucking even more. I predict, what do they got? How many years do you think they got left? If they're at 60,000 CDs now for number one hit, right? At 60,000 CDs a week, and you go 20% in a year. So next year, it'll be, 40,000 something CDs in a week?
Well, it really depends on a lot of factors and rates and that sort of thing, because the hardcore inner circle of CD buyers might hold out to the bitter end or something.
I give it 3 years until we see this actually harming their business in such a way that they go, oh shit, and they have to fire people and all sorts of stuff.
I'll bet that within 5 years, the organization known as the RIAA, well, I'll make it 7 years, will not exist as it does today.
I think what's going to happen is that other media companies that are going to start just buying the old record companies and taking all their stuff and doing better things with all that stuff. I think that's what's going to happen. All the new media companies like Google and
Google
are going to buy all the record companies and do something better with the music.
Wow. I imagine if a philanthropist just bought, because these companies don't make that much money anymore. What if a philanthropist just bought one of these record companies and just public domained everything?
They would be awesome. That's what I would do if I could afford it.
Yeah. Maybe we should put together a fund to make a little shell company from pure donations, nonprofit, and all it does is buy intellectual property and then public domain it.
Sounds good, but how do we decide what to buy first? Start with the cheapest, the low-hanging fruit, or go for the big ones first?
We could set up some sort of...
Because if you get too many low-hanging fruits, you might not be able to get a big thing that actually matters.
You set up some sort of moderation system where people who contribute can vote based on how much money they put in, or maybe we just get people to donate and then I personally decide.
I think what we should do is we put up a list of things that we want to buy and then you can put your money towards a specific thing.
Especially if it was a pledge system as opposed to a give us money now system. Because give us money now, is actually Rimspeak for total scam to steal your money.
Sounds good to me. Let's do both.
Yeah. But no, if we did a pledge system, then there's no way we're scamming because we don't get the money unless we actually have enough to do it. It's like, you have to pledge, and if we get the 10 grand we need or whatever amount of money it is, then you got to give us the money.
Yeah, well, you give us your credit card, and we just don't charge it until the time comes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Or we gather every geek on the internet's credit card, and we spend the rest of our lives in Fiji. Things of the day. Now, this may be a total cop-out, but I was actually surprised by how funny this was. You know all those compilation things people put on YouTube, like, the funniest moments of the creepy pedophile from Family Guy, or, Homer Simpson's best top 10 funny bits.
Yeah, someone goes and, they take their Simpsons DVD collection, they cut out all the Ralph Wiggums, they paste them together, they put it on YouTube, and they hope that, then they make their blog link to it, and then they put some Google ads on their blog, and then they dig their own blog with the route, and then they try to get some money from the Google ads. People do this all the time.
Luckily, Dig Videos kind of prevented that from happening because now all the links go right to the video.
Yep, it's good stuff.
Yeah, every now and then they go to one of those crap non-YouTube video sites, though.
Some of them are okay. Like College Humor's all right.
Oh, College Humor's the only one that isn't crap, because College Humor has its own good content.
Yeah. The Meta Cafe isn't so bad if you have proper ad blockages, but it's still not as good as YouTube or
I
College
shouldn't
Humor.
need to ad block that much.
I know.
Granted, it's no underdogs, even though people in our forums seem to have had trouble downloading XCOM from last night.
That's fine. Let's download Star Control 2 instead, which is much easier to get.
But anyway, I saw this one that claimed to be the funniest moments of Homer Simpson. And while it is not probably all of the funniest moments of Homer Simpson, it is a laugh-out-loud compilation of some of Homer's better moments.
It is quite a good Homer compilation video, I must say.
It starts with one I'd never seen, with the spider, which was probably one of the funniest ones.
Well, I think that one got me going because it reminded me of one of my favorite Penny Arcade comics with the hobo spiders.
Ah, the hobo spiders.
The N-gauge hobo spiders.
I am confident that this box contains N-gauges.
No, it contains cell phones. Ah!
Anyway, this is actually surprisingly worth watching, and I'll leave it at that.
Yep. All right, I had a bunch of things of the day to choose from, and I decided to go with this one because it was a random decision, completely arbitrary. So this is what you get. So there was some sort of sandcastle competition of some sort. I don't know. I don't really care either. But people made awesome sandcastles, the kind of sandcastles that you can't possibly make unless you're a sandcastle master.
I'm surprised you didn't say it. Wait for it. You can't make 10 sandcastles.
Oh.
I was reminded of our inside joke when Dave and Joel, who apparently discovered the video much later than us, started making reference to it.
That's kind of weird because it started out back, I remember months ago, everyone was like, yeah, Dave and Joel, that's that podcast that's small time, but hilarious. And all the other podcasters steal their jokes from it. And now Dave and Joel are stealing jokes from us.
There's a chance.
That we stole from some kids in Brooklyn who are on YouTube.
We should find those kids.
We should find those kids, and we could interview them for a whole episode.
Interview them. I just want to hang out with them.
But we don't know enough about Pokemon to hang out with them.
We'll play some Pokemon Puzzle League.
Yes, anyway. Sandcastles that are too awesome, you can't possibly make them. And what do you do with a sandcastle when you're done making it that it's so awesome? You blow it up.
Surround castle to stay alive.
Now, what if you take a video of the sandcastle blowing up? That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, now you can watch it over and over again in slow motion. You can watch sandcastles blow up that you were never physically near.
What if you play that video backwards?
That's probably pretty cool to watch.
It's really freaking cool because you basically see sand everywhere, a bunch of tiny flecks of sand, and they come together as if by magic to make a sandcastle.
You know what you're actually seeing? How a wizard would make a sandcastle.
That's pretty much, what it would look like if a wizard made a sandcastle with his magic powers. It's pretty cool. I say you should watch it and go, ooh, and then 5 minutes later, you'll never need to watch it again.
So, that is not dead, which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die.
Why do you have to be all like
because that is probably one of the most famous quotes from horror fiction ever, short only of Cthulhu Mythos.
Yeah, aye.
See, tonight, geek culture seems to have been suffused by Cthulhu. Cthulhu is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. Any geek has at least heard of Cthulhu. They know it's that green guy with the tentacles. There's Cthulhu plushies. Cthulhu's in like every webcomic at least once or twice. Cthulhu is an inside joke to every geek social group out there just about.
I mean, I didn't even know anything about Cthulhu or anything until I got to college, but once I did, it sort of exploded.
Yeah, I mean, even despite this, everyone knows about Cthulhu. They see him all the time, yet I've noticed over the years that very few geeks, relatively, have actually read any of the literature from which Cthulhu derives.
It'd be like if everyone was a fan of Darth Vader. You saw Darth Vader everywhere. You saw lightsabers, you dressed up as Darth Vader, you made jokes about where the ambassadors are and choking, admirals and things, but you never saw Empire Strikes Back or Star Wars or Return of the Jedi. You just never saw them. But you loved Darth Vader and you talked about him all the time. That's what it's like.
Yep.
People always talking about Cthulhu, never read Call of Cthulhu. It's not even a book. It's a short story, and you can get it online for free.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And even with all this, there's a lot of things in geek culture and video games out there that derive heavily from the Cthulhu mythos or the Cthulhu stories. Eternal Darkness for the GameCube is so Lovecraftian that, well...
Obviously, the people making that wanted to make a Cthulhu game and couldn't get the Cthulhu license, so they just made a game that was so close instead.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious.
There was also the Call of Cthulhu game.
Yeah, I don't think any of the actual Cthulhu licensed games were any good, as far as I heard.
That's what I've heard. I don't actually know. But in case you couldn't tell, we're not actually talking about Cthulhu. Cthulhu is, in fact, a minor part of a greater body of works written by a man named H.P. Lovecraft. Don't worry about what his actual, what the H and P stand for. It's kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien. Everyone knows him as H.P. Lovecraft, and that's all that matters. I'm not going to go into his biography.
Isn't it Howard Phillips Lovecraft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though his life is actually pretty interesting. His father went insane and died in an asylum. His mother went insane and died in an asylum.
That makes a lot of sense.
He was a nerdly, angry little man. He had a lot of friends through correspondence because he lived mostly as a hermit. And he was a super Anglophile. There's a lot of evidence that he was a super anti-Semite.
All keeps making sense.
All sorts of interesting stuff, but I'm not going to get into that. But when I was a young child, my mother was very much into horror fiction. She read Stephen King, and I think Dean Cook, I forget all those.
My mom also liked the horror type stuff, like the Anne Rices and the Stephen Kings. But
Anne Rice.
I know, but
it's not horror.
It's not. But as a kid, I didn't like horror stuff because I was scared. And then I don't know how I went from being scared of like anything that was the slightest bit scary, like the Boogeyman Man, to not being scared of pretty much anything.
When I was really, really young, I was afraid of the dark and I was afraid of skeletons.
Oh, I was never afraid of skeletons. I always liked skeletons.
When I was a little kid, if you would put me next to a dead body that was freshly killed with like knives in it, or put me next to a cleanly, like a skeleton, a bleached white skeleton, the skeleton would have disturbed me more. I don't know why. Now I think skeletons are awesome.
Skeletons are the best.
Skeletons are to man.
I love skeletons. All right. Anyway. Well, but not the anorexic kind.
I was very much, I liked
kind.
Horror stories, and I had a lot of, children's horror story books, and I read a bunch of Stephen King when I was really, really, probably too young. I remember reading Skeleton Crew when I was a little kid.
I didn't even read Goosebumps.
Oh, I read all the Goosebumps, and I found them trite.
I didn't read any. My brother read them.
But still, like, a lot of this stuff was really kind of scary, and I would talk about it a lot. And one day my mother basically said, I think you're old enough to read real horror. And I said, what? That wasn't horror? I've been reading all Stephen King. That's scary, right? And she hands me Tales of Horror and the Macabre, a collection of H.P. Lovecraft's works, followed by Tales of Terror and Death.
That's the scary stuff right there.
And I was introduced to this world of horror fiction that is so different from all of the other horror fiction out there that is almost its own genre.
I don't know about that. It's just, you read a horror story, right? And what's the typical horror story? Oh, there's someone who's in a tough situation, so the suspense of are they, they're gonna get hurt. The monster's after them. The wolf.
He's calling from the phone upstairs.
The Dracula or the Frankenstein or whatever it is coming.
And he put the money on the collection plate, and the finger bone stuck to his hand.
Yeah, something, and crazy stuff happens, and it's always about The crazy thing that
Gay
happens.
vampires!
A zombie comes out of the ground and goes, boo!
And rice is not horror.
Something is so gross that you're going to bargle, right?
Yeah.
And it's all about what actually really happens or what you think is going to happen in the possible near future because the current situation is all, ooh. H.P. Lovecraft, he doesn't really tell you so much right out what happens. It's always about the unspeakables and the unnamables and the, he kind of, it's weird in that he doesn't lay it out on the table for you, but in the same way, you get the idea in your head or close enough that you don't go insane and die.
Yes, I mean, the stories that H.P. Lovecraft wrote are very varied. They're not like this long story arc of a mythos. They're not this collection of stories that all piece together into something big. They're a lot of generally disconnected stories that kind of reference each other or give nods to other works and that sort of thing. And you can really take each one pretty much independently, and it's still a good story. There's no reason to try to find all the connections between this world that H.P. Lovecraft was making. It's not about his stories as in terms of what they are. It's more about the way he wrote his stories and the themes he used and the way he would describe events. It's not, oh my god, boo, scary. It's a lot more of this unnerving, disturbing kind of horror. Where, as opposed to, say, a zombie story where the zombies are chasing the guy, or at the end, the zombie grabs his leg, and oh my god. There are a lot of stories H.P. Lovecraft wrote where there is some sort of monster, some sort of horrible, beyond time and space, beyond life and death being, and it's coming after someone. But he'll never actually describe it. In fact, it won't even show up until the end, and even then, it doesn't really show up. The story is mostly the person thinking about how afraid of it he is, or trying to deal with it, or trying to get away, despite the fact that the character himself hasn't even seen it, let alone is H.P. Lovecraft describing it to you.
Yeah, a lot of the stories seem to follow a similar pattern, especially Call of Cthulhu, where there's a guy, and something maybe slightly strange happens, or maybe nothing strange happens at all, but someone discovers something and they want to know more about it, like a book or an item or something. And they start researching or investigating, or they get involved in something and they learn more and more. And the more they learn, the more they can't stop learning, but at the same time, the more they wish they never started in the first place. And eventually they get to the end of the road and it's just worse on from here on out.
I don't think anything H.P. Lovecraft ever wrote has... Now, I wouldn't even bother with a happy ending. I don't think he even has melancholy endings. Pretty much everyone's fucked.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world of H.P. Lovecraft, every single story, is pretty much saying a similar thing in one way or another, in that you are just a useless nothing. You're a human being, your life is worthless and meaningless. There are crazy things out beyond the stars and also on Earth that are way more important than you, and you are totally insignificant. If you try to even learn a little bit about the things that are significant in the universe, you'll probably just go insane and die. Pretty much your choices are stay in the shitter that you're in, or try to get out and end up in a worse shitter.
Yes, the general overriding theme of most of H.P. Lovecraft works revolve around this idea that the true nature of reality, what's actually going on, is so utterly alien and horrifying that mankind does not have the physical capacity to deal with it, or to understand it, or to even grasp it for a moment. And that the world and Earth and everything were at one time under the domain of horrible eldritch beings from beyond the stars and beyond death, and that the world is this thing far greater than we could ever understand. But now the stars aren't right, and all of those beings and all those things are asleep, or waiting, or hiding. And for this tiny microsecond of history, mankind has evolved and comes to exist on Earth, totally oblivious to the true reality of the world. And the idea that the worst thing that could ever happen to a person is if they put together all the disparate pieces of information that humanity's collected over the thousands of years that they've existed. If humans figure it out, if humans put the puzzle together and step back and actually see the end result of everything they have discovered, it is so horrible that death is not even an escape.
Yeah, I mean,
This is heavy horror here. This is not light reading.
No, it is not. It's actually sometimes, if you don't read it carefully, hard to figure out what exactly is going on.
Yes, well, he writes in a very archaic style. He was definitely an Anglophile.
Well, I mean, this stuff is from like the 20s.
Well, not only that, his writing was archaic for the 20s. He uses a lot of old, interesting words. He describes things in very strange ways.
In a lot of ways, it's the writing itself that is scary. It's like, you have all these old words that he uses all the time, and it doesn't matter what the words are saying, the words themselves are frightening.
Eldritch cyclopean horrors claw at my squamous flesh.
Yeah, squamous is the famous word that we like to remember quite often.
I don't know, I like the word eldritch, even though I used that in D&D long before I knew about Cthulhu and all that.
Yeah, squamous is my favorite one. It's like, ooh, squamous, it just... Yeah, you don't want to run into anything that's squamous pretty much ever.
Now, the interesting thing about these writings is that the way he presents the works and the way they're written, if you don't know anything about H.P. Lovecraft or the mythos, or you don't even know that it's fiction, you just have this literature and you start reading it, you'll get the sense that it's based on something. You always feel like there's some, maybe not truth to it, not like, well, it's actually based on the ancient writings of the blah, 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 but it really reads like it's based on some real mythology somewhere, or it's based on some actual tablets that we found long ago, or some old culture, even though it's entirely fabricated. In fact, there are a lot of people, like the Necronomicon is a good example. The Necronomicon was invented by H.P. Lovecraft.
Well, not really. I don't think he wrote the Necronomicon itself,
but he made up the idea of the Necronomicon.
Yes.
He called it the Necronomicon.
Yeah, in many of his stories, he refers to a book called the Necronomicon.
It is a grimoire of the most horrible knowledge.
A grimoire. It's a grimoire.
Whatever. Captain didn't read much H.P. Lovecraft at all.
I read enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've read like a whole bunch of books on my shelf over there, and I've read most of them.
All right.
Except for the ones I brought recently. But anyway, it's a grimoire, and it's written by my favorite fictional person ever. Well, I guess they have the best name. The Mad Arab Abdul Al-Hazred. That's just awesome to say, the Mad Arab.
Yeah.
Because they always capitalize Mad and Arab, like he's the Mad Arab.
Yeah, definite article. If you get definite article and mad in your name, that's quite a thing.
Yeah, so he wrote this book, fictional book, written by a fictional guy, in a work of fiction, called the Necronomicon, which is the book that has basically all the horrible stuff in it, and if you read it, you go insane and die, and crazy stuff happens.
Now, a lot of people over the years have published Necronomicons or acted like it was real. A lot of people today believe that the Necronomicon was a real book and that they used this mythology and all these horror stories.
Yep, if you go to Borders or whatever and go to the Randy bullshit section, you can see copies of the Necronomicon there. They're written by who knows who, I'm sure you could find out, but it didn't exist when H.P. Lovecraft was writing about it.
Now, not only do his writings really almost lend this sense of legitimacy to them, but a lot of people attribute things that they think were written by H.P. Lovecraft to him when in fact they weren't. In fact, most of the Cthulhu mythos, the so-called mythos around this, and the outer gods and the elder gods and how they're at war, and all the kind of pieced together stuff, wasn't written by H.P. Lovecraft at all. It was written by all his friends long after his death.
Yeah.
Or The Yellow Sign, or The King in Yellow. That was actually written by a man named Robert Chambers, who was also a pretty good writer, but it wasn't H.P. Lovecraft. The two were friends, but not the same guy.
Yeah, Lovecraft, he wrote some stories that introduced a lot of the creatures and monsters and horrors that are present in, games like Call of Cthulhu and the general Cthulhu mythos. But he never really, established like, all right, well, this is how it works. There's elder gods and outer gods and old ones and this and that and, the other thing. He just kind of threw the monsters in there, and then it was after he was done that people collected all these things and made them work in the same universe in some sort of systematic fashion, ready for RPGing and further writings and fan fictions.
So why are these so scary? I mean, we've already talked about the fact that the way it's written and the way everything is described is so just odd and almost realistic that it's bothersome to read it because you feel like you're missing something or that there's something just, But there's also this idea that there's really no escape for these characters. There are stories, I think The Thing on the Doorstep when I was a kid, this scared me more than just about anything I'd ever read. Because, not to really ruin it, but the main character, the guy, dies. He loses. It's over, right? You lose, you die. That's the end. You might have lost, but now you're dead. Death was no escape, and the story doesn't end.
Yeah.
Think about that. If you were up against something that you don't understand, you can't see, and yet, even if you die, you can't get away. What could you do?
Yeah, I mean, you watch a normal horror movie, let's say, right? And the zombie's chasing you, right? So it's a little bit scary because you have the suspense of trying to get away from the horrible situation. But in the end, usually some of the characters, probably the main character, gets away. There's a way that, they can run away from the zombie. They can kill the zombie. They can do something. One guy might die over there, a guy might die over there, but someone's going to escape. There's a terrible situation with horrible, scary things, and someone's going to live somehow. In H.P. Lovecraft, I mean, the things that in a normal horror story would help you survive, such as learning more about the zombies, acquiring weapons, and actually trying to fight the zombies of some sort. Those things are only going to make it worse and not better.
I mean, if you want to take a nod from the Cthulhu-based role-playing games, the idea is not to win, or to figure it out, or to kill Cthulhu. The idea is pretty much to stave off insanity for as long as possible, assuming full well that any character you play will go insane and or die.
Possibly at the same exact moment. In combination in the famous Lovecraftian insane and dead finishing move. I guess we'll call it.
Yes. So lately we've been reviewing or talking about a lot of things we like, and this is also something that we gush about because H.P. Lovecraft works are some of my favorite writings I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of them better than others.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, the Dream Quest of Unknown Cadith, that's a freaking awesome, super awesome.
I think my favorite work of H.P. Lovecraft's is The Color Out of Space.
That's a good one. I forget which one it is. It's the one with Antarctica and the old ones in the Shoggoth. What's that one called? I forget.
I actually forget the names of a lot of them because I read them in giant anthologies, just one after another.
Yeah, it's like you buy, since they're all short stories, you tend to like buy like these books that have a whole bunch of short stories in them. At the Mountains of Madness, that's the one. Yep. And you just read a bunch of short stories in a row and you forget which one is which. And like you'll remember the name of a story, but you don't remember which story that was. And some of them are a lot scarier or memorable than others because these things are written in pulp magazines and that sort of stuff way back when. So it's not like, everyone was a masterpiece kind of deal.
Yeah. In general, if you want to get an idea of what these works are like, I'd recommend The Color Out of Space. The Shadow Out of Time is really good. The Thing on the Doorstep is pretty creepy, I must say. As a kid...
That might be one of the scarier ones.
As a little kid, I mean, it was pretty scary all the way through. But then at the end, I actually stopped reading H.P. Lovecraft for a while after that. That was a little too much for my young mind.
Yep. Herbert West Reanimator.
And of course, The Call of Cthulhu, which I wouldn't recommend reading first, but I recommend reading it because it's probably the most well-known work. And it has probably another one of my favorite quotes from, I have to read this quote because it too perfectly sums up just about everything that Lovecraft wrote about. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its contents. Someday, the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
All right, if we're going to keep doing this reading game, I want to read something here.
Oh, what are you going to read?
I'm going to read the description of the Shoggoth, which is one of the best monsters. Ready? So this is how I'm going to demonstrate how he describes something without really describing it. You ready? It was a terrible, indescribable thing, vaster than any subway train. A shapeless conjure... Wow, I actually don't know this word. C-O-N-G-E-R-I-E? Conjury? Conjury of protoplasmic bubbles, faintly self-luminous, and with myriads of temporary eyes, forming and unforming as pustules of greenish light, all over the tunnel-filling front that bore down upon us, crushing the frantic penguins, and sheltering over the glistening floor, for that and its kind had swept so evilly free of all litter.
Yeah, try to draw that.
Yeah, try to think of what a Shoggoth looks like from that. Considering he uses the words indescribable, shapeless, and conjury.
See, another word that you'll really have to be familiar with is non-Euclidean.
Yeah, well, if you know anything about geometry, there's a guy named Euclid. He was Greek, right?
Keep going.
Yeah, and he pretty much invented modern basic geometry. And his geometry is a geometry of 3 dimensions.
Well, I think
also 2 dimensions.
I think I can sum it up better. Non-Euclidean geometry, you can have you can do things that you can't do in normal geometry. You can have parallel lines that cross each other, or you can have a right triangle that has 720 degrees within it.
All kinds of crazy stuff.
Imagine things that not only are they're not just difficult to describe. It's not like the person who saw this Shoggoth or saw this city of RIAA just had trouble describing it. It's that he could not fathom what he was seeing. That it is something so alien that it cannot be described, it cannot be understood.
Yeah, I mean, think about this for a second, right? You have a triangle. One of the 3 corners, the triangle has 3 corners and 3 sides. One of the corners is 90 degrees. If you add up the degrees of all 3 corners, it is like 700 degrees. Think about that for a second. Try to get a picture of that in your brain. You can't. That's why he can't even use words to tell you what it looks like. But it's scary as hell. You don't want to run into that triangle, especially if it's part of a monster that's going to eat you.
Man, I talk more about the Cthulhu role-playing game, but we should do that on a Tuesday.
Yeah, the Cthulhu role-playing game is basically role-playing in a universe with all these indescribable things.
There's also Arkham Horror, which you've played. I have yet to play it.
Arkham Horror is one of those teamwork, beat-the-game board games. I think I like it better than that Lord of the Rings board game.
Huh.
But it takes a lot more time than it's worth, basically. Yeah, there's lots of Cthulhu stuff out there. If you like Cthulhu stuff, go for it. There's more than you can handle.
Scott's got a stuffed Cthulhu. Alex has a Cthulhu finger puppet. Our friend Greg, I think he had a Shoggoth and a Star Spawn.
There's a lot of stuff out there. I think I gotta go get a Nyarlathotep one day.
Nyarlathotep is my man, I must say.
He is the crawling chaos.
So, essentially, check out H.P. Lovecraft and all of the related works. I think you're really gonna like it.
Unless you're a wuss.
Now, before we go, I'd also like to note that the deadline is now, as of this podcast, over for the worst podcast in the world contest.
Snaps.
Unless you have what you think is the most awesome entry in the world, I'll accept him up until tomorrow at midnight if you think you've got the best freaking entry. But I must say, there's some stiff competition. People have sent us some pretty bad podcasts that have been going on quite a bit longer than you might have expected.
Yeah. Even before listening, I've narrowed this down to like 3 or 4. And as soon as I go back and listen to what all the rules were, we might have a winner, I think.
Yeah. Granted, we're going to read many of the entries because I find this hilarious. And some people ragged on some pretty popular podcasts.
Yeah, I was expecting people to find these obscure podcasts made by like one 10-year-old nerd in his closet or something.
Granted,
like that.
some of them did.
Some of them did. But that's what I was expecting. Then some people came out and they were like, yeah, this popular podcast is the worst podcast. And I'm like, I listen to that.
I'm friends with that podcaster.
Yeah, or it's like, hey, I've heard of them. They're just normal. What do you? They're not bad or great, but they're not the worst podcast.
Yep. So, and it will take us probably, I think, the week after next, we're actually going to announce the winners. Because I want to spend the time to thoroughly listen to each and every one of these. Perhaps to get relevant audio to put into our show.
Do you really want to make our podcast so terrible by putting the worst podcast ever in it?
Possibly.
Well, if anything, it'll help people understand how great our podcast is when it's placed in such stark and abrupt contrast with the worst podcast there ever was.
Oh, by the way, you should listen to Anime World Order. It's a good anime podcast. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.